people develop healthy and successful relationships when you have something in common. So I think it can be a very, very great way to meet people. But then also, the only thing too, and this is just kind of a random issue, but it's a lot of times people's dating identity online is different than their identity in person. So it's just something to think about, whether those two identities should be the same. I think kind of just a thought, like whether that should be, there should be consistency, because some people are very different online than they are offline. So.
Jennifer, what do you think dating will look like in the future? I mean, what form do you think that future technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality will have on dating?
Well, you know, there have been virtual sites like Second Life and that type of stuff. They've gone by the wayside. I think that now we're seeing that they're still there, but they're not as active and they're not as busy. I think now it's getting more into mobile. I mean, if you look at the success with mobile, that continues to grow. So, and also going back to the niche sites, I think that because getting into the economics of the dating industry, the technology side of it, is that you need an incredible amount of startup money. So for somebody to come in and try to go up against the big guys right now is close to impossible. So the niche sites, definitely, absolutely, because you don't need a huge amount of startup money or VC money. And then for sure the mobile is growing, especially in the gay communities. There's apps like Grindr and, you know, the geolocation-based stuff. I think we're seeing a lot of movement towards that. It's funny because I did integrate some virtual stuff on the site years ago, and people really weren't that interested in it. You know, it was something I'm not doing it anymore because it didn't gain the traction that I would have hoped. So I'm not quite sure about the virtual thing, but mobile, definitely.
Nicholas, from your perspective, you know, what does the entertainment and media play in our perceptions of sexuality?
An amazingly important role. In a nutshell, that's it. No, it really does. I mean, the media is magical. It's a form of, it's propaganda is media, you know. It's a form of communication that goes so deeply into the subconscious and shape changes what our belief systems are. It reflects it, but also shape changes it. It has an effect on it. And so I think people in the media have such an important role. I don't even know if a lot of people in the media realize it, because they're so enmeshed in that cyclical kind of influence. So I've worked in journalism for many years now, both as a director in film and documentaries, but also as a journalist for magazines. And I think my study of it, especially related to my film, I mean, you take a look at going back to the masturbation subject, and I find that subject so fascinating because it's the first experience many of us have with sexuality. So it's going to the core. It's our relationship to ourself, really. And what is that image? Let's take a look at what was the reaction to Dr. Joycelyn Elders, the Surgeon General who was forced to resign by Bill Clinton back in the 90s. Bill Clinton, who had stuck a cigar in his intern, I'll leave it at that. And he wanted the first African female Surgeon General to resign because she said at an AIDS conference that we should talk about masturbation in our education program. And she was chastised. She was taken down. She was forced to resign, which basically means fired. And Paul Rubens, the comedian, blackballed, a.k.a. Pee Wee Herman, blackballed because he was in a porn theater masturbating. You know, it's curious to me that came out about 4 or 5 days after Jeffrey Dahmer was, and no one's really made note of this that I know of, but Jeffrey Dahmer was found being involved in the monstrosity that he created with all these people, you know, the people that he mangled and killed, and so people were looking at him as the monster, and his first violation was masturbating in front of boys at like a carnival or something. So, and that came out after that too. So the media, there again, you know, we have this monster figure, and then we have Paul Rubens, and then how the press just jumped on that extremely. You know, I think there's a lot of this going on. So to wrap it up, how do we view our own relationship to sex, and how is the media going to present that image? Is it going to constantly be as a joke, which usually in film, especially guys, it's a joke. Ben Stiller in the film, you know, Something About Mary. Or is it going to be something more positive or sexy? And let's see where we go with it.
That's a really good question, the reorienting our relationship to pleasure and our bodies. Because masturbation is, our arms are a certain length for a reason. And masturbation, if it's done mindfully, can be an incredible avenue for growth and intimacy building, safer sex and early dates. You know, if I masturbate next to my partner side by side, I get to be open to you emotionally and physically present, but we are completely safe. So we can decide, do we like each other enough to go further and do things that are potentially more risky, emotionally and physically. Our bodies are our friends, and if we can recalibrate our relationship to pleasure so that we can indulge in it in a healthful, mindful manner, many things would be revealed and many things I think would be healed, because it is our shame over our desires that causes us, I think, a lot of times to act out inappropriately, self-harmfully, hurting other people. And if I can do this alone in a room, I'm not hurting anybody. If I'm doing it to learn more about myself and not to avoid you. And that is my decision to make about my body, yours about your body, etc. So it's a personal choice matter. Do I want to act out more healthfully, or do I want to stay in my room and mentally and emotionally masturbate because I'm scared to go out in public? And masturbation can increase confidence and and happiness with one's body, or it can be used to reinforce my idea of loneliness and poor me. It is partly our attitude toward it. And I think it's, as a nurse, Jocelyn Elders was taking a medical position. It's a healthful thing to encourage children, young people to masturbate as opposed to fumbling around the back seats of cars. And for that, she had to lose her job just by stating a medically appropriate position.
You know, I just want to jump in on this because we talked about masturbation, and I don't want to be the jerk that brought it on masturbation, but masturbation and sex, where do we draw the line in the future? I mean, truly, like, when you're masturbating in your own private arena and you're online viewing something or maybe online chatting with somebody, what's the distinction between masturbation and sex? I mean, technology is really blurring that line, right? So when we talk about masturbation, we kind of are talking in some ways as to the future of sex, I think, so.
I also wanted to add, this was a question about the media.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, being someone who gets pulled into the media cycle when people act out sexually, that there is a great fascination with this topic in America. And unfortunately what happens is when someone like Anthony Weiner does what he did, you know, I'm not saying a congressman should be sending his pictures of his body and penis online to strangers, or especially if he's married and